Hey, welcome back everybody. Jeff Frick here with theCUBE. We are in San Francisco at Pier 48 at the GE Minds and Machines. 3,000 people, really all the heavy hitters inside of GE from all the different business units, talking about digital transformation, the industrial internet, and how they're really using software, as Mark Andreessen likes to say, of not only eating the consumer world, but eating the industrial world, and you can't have software without developers. So we got a really important guest here. Glad to have Lothar Schubert, the Director of Developer Relations for GE Digital. Welcome.
Hi Jeff, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, so we go to like 100 shows a year, and everybody wants developers, right? Everybody wants that great developer to come work for their company and develop on their platform. Why should they come work for GE? What are you guys doing that's really appealing that you find with the developers that you work with?
Right. I mean, it's a really good time to be a developer right now, to be a software developer, architect, to be a data scientist right now, because in very high demand right now. I mean, we talk about the digital industrial transformation right now, but behind every digital asset, there is somebody who builds those digital assets, and those are typically software developers and architects and product managers and those kind of people.
Right, and it's amazing how successful Bill and team out of San Ramon have done to build the GE Digital team so fast and to hire so much talent in a very competitive environment. It's not easy to get engineers in the Bay Area.
It has been growing amazingly fast over the last couple of years here. When we started in Silicon Valley probably like 5 years ago, and growing to like 1,500 people and growing here right now. It was very fast growth, very well managed fast growth as well. And I mean, there are multiple reasons why GE has been able to attract really good talent. He had a very competitive market, as you say. And I mean, a couple of the reasons are, I mean, certainly we work with very interesting technologies. I think that's part of it as well. We work with lots of open source technologies, working with many of the new technologies there. We build on Cloud Foundry, for example. We work with Eclipse. We work with Docker technology. We are certain projects that we're researching, partners working with blockchain, for example. So there's really lots of interesting technology. We work UX technologies, data science, that sort of thing here. But it's also the idea about really having an impact on the world. It's what attracted me to GE 3 years ago as well. Working before in other kind of companies and work on business back-end automation and social media and this kind of things. It's all nice, but really impacting physical lives of people with physical things, that's really, really interesting.
Right, it's funny, there's a famous quote, the smartest minds of my generation are working on ad placement, so you'll get the Starbucks ad as you walk down. But you guys work on really big, gnarly, hard problems. And as you said, the scale at which the machines that you guys operate are so big that making 1%, 2%, 3% incremental improvements has huge economic benefit, but also conservation, second order impacts like greenhouse gases and all this other stuff. I mean, these are big, hairy problems.
Yeah, if you drive 1% more output and power, for example, and you can do this with software, you can do this actually easily, not easily, I mean, it requires work here, but you can achieve those kind of benefits here. And 1% more power output, you can power the entire country of Canada or Germany for free, for example. You do that with software, with writing code. That's a pretty big deal, right? Or you can save lives by improving healthcare, driving the throughput through the healthcare system. What about saving 50,000 lives a year? I mean, those are kind of impacts you can have with industrial internet, and it's real.
Yeah, and Jeff talked about that in his keynote, about really just there's a whole lot of efficiency that can be wrung out of the system that hasn't been taken out of the system recently. So it's almost like this new wave of technology in the industry driven by software.
Exactly, and that's where GE has been going, going from industrial to industrial and software analytics company as well. And as Jeff says, every industrial company needs to become also a digital company as well moving forward if they want to advance, and certainly if they don't want to be left behind, which brings us back to developers, because if you want to become a digital company, you need to have software, essentially, right? And the situation is, there is, for the things that we are talking about here, it's very fast moving market. There are just not so many standard applications that you can just buy from one of the traditional software houses. It just does not exist. That means software needs to be built and needs to be integrated. And who's doing this? It's the developers.
So there's three big trends that are happening in the market. We've touched a little bit on all of them. I want to jump in a little bit deeper.
Sure.
So open source, big data, and cloud. We hear about that at all the shows we go to, whether it's IBM, HP, Oracle, you name it, these are big mega trends. And you guys really play in all. I think you just listed a whole bunch of open source technologies from Docker to blockchain. I don't know that people know maybe the degree of which you guys have embraced open source. I wonder if you can unpack that a little bit.
Our Predix platform is built on Cloud Foundry, right? Cloud Foundry is an open source project, is an open source platform. And GE is not only consuming it, but also contributing. So GE has actually committers on staff who contribute to the open source community as well. So that's one probably major investment. Recently we announced our commitment to the Eclipse Foundation as well, and then we work with different technologies. Cassandra, you mentioned big data, for example, which is the underpinning of our asset service, which again is key building block of the digital twin model. So yeah, GE is very much vested in open source, certainly consuming lots of open source, but also working with the communities to invest and commit to open source. One area you mentioned about data and data management and big data and fast data. It's certainly true in industrial space, right? The aircraft engine, I think, has been quoted a few times here. It used to be 10 years ago, 3 kilobytes of data, 30 parameters, and 3 snapshots for each flight.
Right.
Now we talk about potential from 0.5 terabyte of data, about 5,000 parameters, and 30 snapshots every second. Right, and if you do this across a couple of airlines, you easily run into terabytes of petabytes of potential data that are waiting to get analyzed, and that's where data science comes into. One of the hardest jobs right now is to be a data scientist. Coming out of college, you can actually make a really good salary if you're really good in this area. And if you want to be really good in data science, you need to understand, of course, analytics and software, but also physics. It's really important to understand material science, for example, to understand what does this really mean to do really good forecasting, to drive 97% or more accuracy for forecasting, which is then required for digital twin.
There's a movie out on the human face of big data. It's a really spectacular movie, but they talk about on the healthcare side back in the day, they would know what would trigger a problem with a preemie baby, and the monitors were connected to it, but they were only sampling it every so often when the nurse would come and take a look at the strip, compared to watching it all the time to see the indicators in which they could have action. So the opportunity now with the big data is so much different.
Exactly, think about
really
you can do it.
Lives.
You can connect it like real time, you run streaming analytics, and then you raise the exception directly to a practitioner to take action immediately. Really huge opportunity, and it's happening, which is really...
It's happening. And then on the cloud side, so we were at Predix Transform, I don't even know, time flies, 6 months ago, however long it was. 1,700 people really just there for developing applications in the cloud and taking advantage of the cloud. So one of the big things in kind of the IT side here is hybrid cloud versus public cloud versus private cloud. But you guys have kind of this other angle on cloud, which is really edge to cloud. It's a different way of kind of how you distribute the load, how you distribute the analytics. Where's the data, where's the analytics, what's moving, what's not moving.
We're talking a lot about like a Predix system here now at this show here as well. And really, due to the fact it's not just cloud is important, it's incredibly important, but things are also happening at the edge here. And there's many reasons for this. You have at the edge, which is where the machines are, where the sensors are, where the control systems are. You have the SCADA systems and industrial PCs and control systems. And that's where lots of the data in IoT are generated. Not exclusively, but that's where lots of data being generated. Of course, you want to tie into those data, take data from there and bring it into the cloud where you discover patterns. But take the learnings back, for example, then back to the edge as well, and then run real-time analytics at the edge. And you need to do it in a secured way, of course, as well. So cybersecurity is really important. But yeah, it's really this edge to cloud and cloud to edge continuum, which is really important, which is also a key differentiator for Predix. Is one reason why GE built Predix to begin with. And Jeff, you talked about the big trends. Another buzzword is DevOps, right?
Right,
which is being talked a lot about in the space, which is about bringing development and IT operations together. Now, DevOps is essentially, it goes hand in hand with approaches such as continuous integration, continuous delivery, releasing software quickly into production. And consumer-oriented companies have been doing this for years, the leading companies. And really some of the companies who are really top-notch in the space, Netflix comes to mind, Etsy, they've seen 30 times faster or more frequent deployments into production, but also 60 times less failures.
Right.
Now, and we're building now Predix to enable this kind of DevOps approaches for the industrial world in a secured, in a highly compliance from a regulatory perspective environment and going across cloud and edge. We're doing it using the microservices architecture with Predix.
It's good stuff. I want to bring it back to the developers though, because Owen, the famous TV guy that does all the GE commercials, he was the software guy that's going to work for GE that none of his friends can figure out, none of his family can figure out. But he was there, people were taking pictures, he's like a rock star. From your point of view, you got to be thrilled. I looked at before we came on, it's reported by Forbes that GE spent $2.5 million on that ad campaign promoting Owen, and the gal's name is Sarah, to really highlight the fact that this is a great place for developers to be, to solve big problems, to do cool work, and to really have a great impact. So that's fantastic.
And it's actually really true, and kind of like the journey, if you follow the Owen commercials, like the initial one, all his friends kind of stunned, how are you going to an industrial company? But the sequel, which was coming out, I think, 1 year ago, he goes to the trade show and everybody wants to have his business card because they want to work for GE. And there's certainly some truth to this. It's kind of a transformation that we have seen as well. And I mean, it speaks for GE, but also really the opportunity in the industrial space, which people really taking note, and which is really exciting.
Well, it speaks to the leadership
developers.
for the internal transformation. You know, it's not just slideware. You know, GE's putting their money where their mouth is to help you go build these developer relationships and get these people.
It's really the platform is out there. It went into general availability in March this year, February, March this year. We have a marketplace with services, with service catalog, where partners are putting their APIs, programming interface and services in, and can monetize on top of the platform as well. And we have a really healthy ecosystem now growing. It's now like at 19,000 developers. It will be 20,000 developers by the end of the year who are working on the Predix platform. Given that we just launched really 8-9 months ago, that's a pretty strong growth.
And I assume there'll be another Transform in 2017, right? We'll track that down?
Yeah, it's going to be another Transform to 2017.
All right, Lothar, so we're out of time. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, Jeff,
take a look at the developers. Where do they go? How do they get started? Why should they come spend their time building
the best thing is to get started with Predix, of course, is go to predix.io, where you can create your free developer account. You can get started. You go to the tutorial section, you build your first app. And that's a great way to get started with Predix and join the community, join the forums, be active.
All right. Well, Lothar, thanks for stopping by. Now I'll shake your hand. All right. I'm Jeff Frick, he's Lothar, he's doing developer relations. I'm theCUBE. You're watching from downtown San Francisco, Pier 48, GE Minds and Machines. We'll be back with our next guest after this short break.